Fascism, a term often thrown around in heated political debates, carries a weight far heavier than many realize. It is not merely a synonym for authoritarianism or right-wing ideology. It is a specific form of political behavior, characterized by its unique blend of nationalism, authoritarianism, and social Darwinism. While the specter of fascism has haunted Europe for over a century, its presence in the United States has often been downplayed or outright denied. This video seeks to shed light on the often overlooked history of fascism in America, tracing its roots from the early 20th century to its resurgence in the 21st. By examining historical parallels, analyzing the tactics employed by fascist movements, and exploring the socio-political conditions that allow such ideologies to flourish, this essay aims to provide a deeper understanding of this complex and dangerous phenomenon. The United States, often lauded as a beacon of democracy, has its own dark undercurrents of fascism that have surfaced throughout its history. From the rise of the Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s to the emergence of neo-Nazi groups in recent decades, the country has grappled with the insidious creep of this dangerous ideology. The face of American fascism may differ in some aspects from its European counterparts, but the underlying principles of hatred, division, and the pursuit of power remain eerily similar. This video delves into the heart of this unsettling reality, exploring the factors that have contributed to the persistence of fascist tendencies within American society. The purpose of this exploration is not to incite fear or despair, but to foster awareness and understanding. By confronting the uncomfortable truths of the past and present, we can better equip ourselves to recognize and combat the dangers of fascism in all its forms. This video serves as a call to action, urging viewers to remain vigilant against the seductive allure of authoritarianism and to actively defend the principles of democracy and equality that are constantly under threat. Only through active engagement and unwavering commitment to these ideals can we hope to prevent the shadow of fascism from engulfing our nation and the world. The seeds of American fascism were sown in the fertile ground of nativism and white supremacy, deeply ingrained in the nation's history since its inception. The early 20th century witnessed the burgeoning of these sentiments, fueled by anxieties surrounding rapid social change, economic instability, and the influx of immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe. These newcomers, often perceived as threats to the established social order and economic opportunities, became easy targets for scapegoating. The rise of the Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s, with its virulent racism, anti-Catholicism, and anti-immigrant agenda, exemplified this growing tide of intolerance. The Klan's ideology resonated with a surprisingly large segment of the American population, demonstrating the insidious appeal of fascism to those seeking simple solutions to complex problems. The Klan's message of white Protestant supremacy, couched in the language of patriotism and traditional values, resonated with those who felt left behind by the rapidly changing world. They promised a return to a mythical past, where white Americans held unquestioned dominance, and blamed immigrants, minorities, and other marginalized groups for the nation's ills. The passage of the 1924 Immigration Act, which severely restricted immigration from Southern and Eastern Europe, reflected the growing influence of nativist and white supremacist ideologies on American policy. This act, driven by the fear that these immigrants were undesirable and posed a threat to American culture and values, effectively slammed the door on millions seeking a better life. The law served as a testament to the power of fear-mongering and prejudice to shape national policy. The convergence of nativism, white supremacy, and economic anxieties created a breeding ground for fascist ideas to take root and flourish. This toxic mix, embraced by groups like the KKK, exploited the fears and insecurities of the time, offering simplistic solutions that appealed to a population grappling with uncertainty and change. The early 20th century served as a stark warning of the dangers inherent in ignoring the appeal of fascist rhetoric, a lesson that remains eerily relevant in the 21st century. Fascist movements, regardless of their geographical or historical context, share a common toolkit of manipulative tactics designed to exploit existing social divisions, sow fear and distrust, and ultimately seize power. These tactics, perfected over decades of practice, rely on a potent mix of propaganda, scapegoating, and what has come to be known as the big lie. Propaganda, in its various forms, plays a crucial role in shaping public perception and garnering support for fascist agendas. By controlling the narrative, suppressing dissenting voices, and disseminating carefully crafted messages through various media, fascist regimes aim to create a cult-like following. Scapegoating, another cornerstone of fascist strategy, involves identifying and targeting specific groups as the source of all societal problems. These groups, often minorities, immigrants, or those deemed different by the dominant group, are demonized and dehumanized through relentless propaganda campaigns. They are falsely accused of threatening the nation's identity, values, and way of life, diverting attention away from the real issues and channeling public anger and frustration towards convenient scapegoats. The big lie, a term coined by Adolf Hitler, refers to the tactic of spreading a colossal falsehood, so outrageous and audacious that people are more likely to believe it. This tactic preys on the human tendency to believe that something so boldly stated must hold some truth, especially when repeated ad nauseum through controlled media channels. The effectiveness of the big lie lies in its ability to overwhelm critical thinking, erode trust in established institutions, and create an alternate reality where the fabricated narrative becomes the accepted truth. Fascist movements throughout history have successfully employed these tactics to devastating effect. From Nazi Germany's demonization of Jews to the Rwandan genocide's targeting of the Tutsi population, the consequences of unchecked propaganda, scapegoating, and the big lie have been catastrophic. Understanding these tactics is crucial to recognizing and combating the insidious nature of fascism in its contemporary manifestations. By arming ourselves with knowledge and critical thinking skills, we can resist the seductive allure of these manipulative techniques and work towards fostering a more just and equitable society. A defining characteristic of fascist movements is the emergence of a charismatic leader who embodies the aspirations and anxieties of the masses. This figure, often referred to as the strongman, cultivates a cult of personality that transcends rational discourse and fosters an environment of blind loyalty and obedience. The strongman presents himself as the savior of the nation, the only one capable of restoring order, prosperity, and greatness. He taps into the fears and frustrations of the populace, offering simple solutions to complex problems and promising to restore a mythical golden age. The strongman's appeal lies in his ability to connect with the emotional core of his followers, bypassing rational thought and critical analysis. He speaks in grandiose terms, promising to make the nation great again, to crush enemies both foreign and domestic, and to usher in a new era of prosperity and dominance. He positions himself as the embodiment of the nation's will, the only one who can truly understand and represent the needs of the people. This carefully constructed persona, amplified through relentless propaganda and the suppression of dissenting voices, creates an aura of invincibility and inevitability around the strongman. The cult of personality thrives on the suppression of dissent and critical thinking. Those who dare to question the strongman's motives, actions, or pronouncements are branded as traitors, enemies of the people, or unpatriotic dissidents. The strongman's grip on power relies on maintaining this climate of fear and intimidation, ensuring that any potential opposition is swiftly silenced. The allure of the strongman lies in his ability to offer a sense of security and certainty in uncertain times. By presenting himself as the ultimate protector and provider, he appeals to the primal human desire for order and stability. However, this seductive facade often masks a dangerous thirst for power and a willingness to trample on democratic norms and individual rights to achieve his goals. Section 5. The Stain of White Supremacy, a cornerstone of American fascism. To truly understand the persistence and evolution of fascism in the United States, one must confront the uncomfortable truth that white supremacy has been, and continues to be, a cornerstone of this ideology. From the nation's founding on stolen land and built by enslaved people, to the Jim Crow era and the ongoing struggle for racial justice, the legacy of white supremacy has cast a long shadow over American history. This deep-seated belief in the inherent superiority of the white race has provided fertile ground for fascist movements to take root and flourish. White supremacist ideology, with its emphasis on racial purity, hierarchy, and dominance, aligns perfectly with the core tenets of fascism. Both embrace a worldview where power is inherently zero-sum, where one group's gain necessitates another's loss. This ideology has been used to justify slavery, segregation, mass incarceration, and countless other forms of systemic racism that have plagued the United States for centuries. The resurgence of white supremacist groups and ideologies in recent years is a testament to the enduring power of this hateful ideology. Emboldened by the rhetoric of political leaders who have embraced nativist and divisive language, these groups have become increasingly visible and vocal. The events of Charlottesville in 2017, where white supremacists marched with torches and chanted racist slogans, served as a stark reminder that the cancer of white supremacy is alive and well in America. It is no coincidence that many of these groups also espouse explicitly fascist beliefs. They see in fascism a path to achieving their ultimate goal of a white ethno-state, a nation purged of those deemed racially inferior. Confronting and dismantling white supremacy is not just a matter of social justice, it is essential to safeguarding American democracy from the threat of fascism. Section 6. Change and Backlash: The Rise of Fascism in Times of Societal Upheaval. History has repeatedly demonstrated that periods of rapid social, economic, or political change often create fertile ground for the rise of extremist ideologies, including fascism. This is because such periods tend to generate widespread feelings of uncertainty, anxiety, and resentment among those who perceive themselves as losing ground or facing an existential threat to their way of life. These anxieties can be easily exploited by demagogues and aspiring autocrats who offer simplistic solutions, scapegoats to blame, and a vision of a return to a mythical past when things were supposedly better. In the United States, several historical periods have witnessed a surge in fascist activity, coinciding with times of significant societal upheaval. The Great Depression, for example, saw the rise of various fascist and proto-fascist groups who capitalized on the widespread economic hardship and social unrest. These groups, often inspired by the successes of Mussolini's Italy and Hitler's Germany, promised to restore order, revive the economy, and restore America to its former glory. Similarly, the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s, while ultimately a triumph for equality and justice, also triggered a backlash from white Americans who felt threatened by the dismantling of Jim Crow and the push for racial equality. This backlash manifested in the resurgence of the Ku Klux Klan, the rise of segregationist politicians, and widespread violence against civil rights activists. More recently, the election of Barack Obama, the nation's first black president, triggered a wave of racist and xenophobic backlash that fueled the rise of the Tea Party movement and, ultimately, helped pave the way for the election of Donald Trump. These historical examples illustrate the cyclical nature of fascism, its tendency to re-emerge in new forms during times of societal stress and transformation. Section 7. Echoes of the Past: Trumpism and the Modern Republican Party. The presidency of Donald Trump marked a turning point in American politics, one that exposed the fragility of democratic norms and the susceptibility of a significant portion of the electorate to the allure of authoritarianism. While Trump himself may not fit neatly into the traditional definition of a fascist dictator, his rhetoric, tactics, and policies bore striking similarities to those employed by fascist movements throughout history. Trump's rise to power was fueled by a potent mix of nativism, racism, and economic anxiety, tapping into the same wellspring of resentment and fear that has historically fueled fascist movements. He scapegoated immigrants, Muslims, and other minority groups, blaming them for the nation's ills and stoking fears of a white Christian America under siege. Trump's embrace of the big lie, the relentless repetition of falsehoods and conspiracy theories, further eroded trust in democratic institutions and created an alternate reality where facts were malleable and truth was subjective. His attacks on the media as the enemy of the people, his attempts to delegitimize the electoral process, and his encouragement of violence against his opponents were all hallmarks of authoritarian leaders throughout history. Perhaps most concerning was the Republican Party's complicity in Trump's rise and his subsequent attempts to subvert democracy. The party, once a bastion of conservative values and a champion of limited government, morphed into a vehicle for Trump's personal ambitions, abandoning its principles in pursuit of power. This Faustian bargain has left the Republican Party deeply divided, with many of its members embracing Trump's brand of authoritarian populism, while others cling to the remnants of its traditional conservative identity. Section 8. The New Faces of Hate: Contemporary Far-Right Movements. While the Republican Party under Trump provided fertile ground for the normalization of fascist ideas within mainstream politics, the far-right fringes of American society have witnessed the emergence of more explicitly fascist and white supremacist groups. These groups, fueled by online radicalization, conspiracy theories, and a deep-seated hatred of minorities and liberals, pose a direct threat to American democracy and the safety of marginalized communities. Groups like the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and the Three Percenters, often clad in paramilitary gear and armed with assault rifles, have openly embraced violence as a means of achieving their political goals. They view themselves as modern-day patriots defending the nation from the perceived threats of socialism, communism, and a supposed globalist conspiracy. The January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol, where a mob of Trump supporters, including members of these far-right groups, stormed the building in an attempt to overturn the results of the 2020 election, served as a chilling reminder of the very real danger posed by these extremist movements. These groups thrive on disinformation, conspiracy theories, and a distorted view of history that paints white men as the rightful rulers of the nation. They exploit social media platforms to spread their propaganda, recruit new members, and organize rallies and protests, often resorting to violence and intimidation. The rise of these extremist groups is a troubling trend that demands attention and action. Law enforcement agencies must take seriously the threat posed by these groups, and hold accountable those who engage in violence or incite others to do so. Social media companies must also take responsibility for the role their platforms play in spreading hate speech, disinformation, and calls to violence. Section 9. Safeguarding Democracy, a call for vigilance and resistance. The threat of fascism to American democracy is not a hypothetical concern. It is a clear and present danger that demands vigilance, resistance, and a renewed commitment to the values of equality, justice, and the rule of law. The erosion of democratic norms, the rise of extremist ideologies, and the increasing polarization of American society have created an environment where fascism can flourish if left unchecked. Safeguarding democracy requires a multifaceted approach that addresses the root causes of extremism while simultaneously combating its symptoms. Education plays a crucial role in inoculating future generations against the allure of authoritarianism. By teaching critical thinking skills, promoting media literacy, and fostering a deep understanding of democratic principles and the dangers of extremism, we can equip young people with the tools they need to recognize and resist attempts to undermine democracy. Strengthening democratic institutions is also essential. This includes reforming campaign finance laws to reduce the influence of money in politics, protecting voting rights, and ensuring the independence of the judiciary and the press. Holding elected officials accountable for their words and actions is crucial. Politicians who embrace extremist rhetoric, incite violence, or attempt to subvert democratic norms must be held accountable by voters and by their peers. Finally, combating fascism requires a collective commitment to building a more just and equitable society. Addressing systemic racism, reducing economic inequality, and promoting social justice are not just moral imperatives. They are essential to creating a society where the conditions that allow fascism to thrive are minimized. The fight against fascism is not a battle that can be won once and for all. It is an ongoing struggle that demands constant vigilance and a willingness to defend democratic values at every turn. By embracing the principles of equality, justice, and the rule of law, and by actively resisting all forms of extremism, we can work towards building a more perfect union and safeguarding American democracy for generations to come.